Hello, people of the world, or most likely just Northern Virginia, unless one of our 5 viewers is from Mauritania or Cambodia or someplace. Probably not. This is episode 5 of the Soapbox. We are the Babbling Idiots. It is the week of April 11th, and some big news that we're going to get to right away. The Panama Papers, which you might have heard of. Most of us probably don't know much about it. It's all to wade through, but we're just going to tell you what we know about it, and then we're going to discuss it. So I think Patrick wants to tell us all about it.
Essentially, the Panama Papers are this huge scandal, and they resolve around this one law firm in Panama called Mossack Fonseca. Basically, what's happening is through this law firm, a ton of just businessmen and people with a lot of money all around the world have been using this to evade taxes and just filter their money through this place so that they don't have to go through all of the issues of doing that kind of thing throughout their own countries. And this kind of connects to how we were talking about Brazil before, because those Brazilian politicians who are getting tons of funds from Petrobras, they're now using Mossack Fonseca. This is so hard to pronounce. I don't really know how to do it. But anyways, they're cycling their money through there, and it's actually affecting the U.S. because they're using it to buy expansive condos in Florida, especially South Florida. And this is driving up the prices of Florida condos way past what people who live there can afford. So it's honestly, it affects us all, and it expands all over the world. For instance, David Cameron, Prime Minister of Great Britain's Parliament, his father had money that went through MF, is what I'm going to call them from now on.
I'll call it by its full name.
Okay, but
You can give it the initials. That's cool.
They're going to have the initials MF now, so I don't have to continually pronounce their names. But essentially, he cycled money through there just to evade Great Britain's taxes and stuff. And now David Cameron is all like, "Hey guys, don't worry about that. The past is the past. We shouldn't be thinking about that." And Edward Snowden totally called him out on it on Twitter and was all like, "Oh, of course, because you're one of the people that benefits from this. That's why you want to sweep it under the rug." But honestly, it's a huge deal. It affects people, and it just shows how the entire world's economic systems are really only for that upper 1% who can do the kind of things like this. You're not going to talk to some middle class worker who's cycling their money through MF. It just doesn't happen. And it's even caused whose prime minister stepped down?
Iceland.
Iceland, yeah. Iceland's prime minister was found to be cycling money through them, and he stepped down from office. And that just shows you it's all over the world this is happening. People, even though Putin has not directly done this, a lot of people around Putin have done this.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is $1 billion went through there to a ski resort that Putin always goes to. And it's just the tracking of money through this system kind of points to Putin being involved too, and I wouldn't be surprised, So it's all over the place, and it's a huge deal.
If you look at all the list of the people involved, someone from nearly most countries are involved in some way, but some of the big players are some of the actual heads of states. So, like we said, Iceland's prime minister, don't even try to pronounce his name. He resigned. People are calling for David Cameron's resignation, although it was his father, but he did benefit from it. And I don't know whether he's going to resign or not, but I don't really see. It could happen. But then also the president of Argentina, the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of the United Arab Emirates, the president of Ukraine, the former emir of Qatar, former president of Sudan, and then a couple other heads of states, and then a long list of other government officials and really high up people in politics. But basically, it's like what's going on in America, what Bernie's talking about with the 1%, but this is throughout the whole world. And if I want to say, if this doesn't bring to attention people with a lot of money just exploiting offshore tax havens and finding loopholes and getting out of spending what they need to be spending. I don't know what will, but at the same time, because it's such a this is a hard thing to understand. Like, you can get the gist of it, but there's a lot to it. If people don't want to go into all that, so even though this is a huge thing and it should garner people's attention, people probably aren't going to, because it's a lot to get into.
And just to kind of show how much it is to get into, there was 3.2 terabytes of information that was released through this, and it was released to a German newspaper, and so obviously there's people that are still working on it right now, you know, still trying to put all these ends together, just because it's so much information that you have to go through, like millions of emails and just tons of pictures and all that kind of stuff. It's just, we honestly haven't even gotten to the bottom of it yet. We're still like swimming down there, and it's just so much to process, like for real and like mentally.
I mean, we probably can't even say too much about it without sounding stupid, because we don't know enough about it. But like before, you were asking me whether I thought Mossack Fonseca MF was at fault for this, and that's a question asking, because basically what all these people did was legal. It's legal to set up these funds with a foreign law firm, but of course it's not very moral, and you're evading taxes. But
yeah, it's legal.
We don't know much more. We don't know enough about it to make real ethical judgments.
It's legal for the law firm, but obviously, like, when people are using it for tax evasion and stuff, that's illegal, you know? But it's just like, if MF knew what they were doing, should they have stopped it? Because their business runs on this, but at the same time, you're doing something really wrong. And that kind of reminds me, the inventor of K-Cups, if you know, like, Keurig cups, those are incredibly wasteful. Just the amount of plastic that those alone use is amazing. And you can't really recycle them because they're a proprietary blend of plastic, and you have to know, like, exactly what the blend of plastic is to recycle something. This dude said that his biggest regret ever was inventing the K-Cup. And and he did get pushed out of the company and only made $50,000 off of it. But still, I mean, even if he was making money now, he would probably still regret that, just because I think it was 10 times that the amount of K-Cups used could wrap around the earth.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just so wasteful. Like, you're using up a lot of plastic, and you're only getting one cup of coffee every time you make a cup of coffee. So it's just like, when someone does something like that, should they continue to do it, or should they benefit from it, you know? So it's just, it's probably a big moral dilemma that the people who work there are having.
You know, it always frightens me with, like, wasteful stuff, especially with plastic, is when you figure out how many water bottles people use. That you always hear things like, the amount of water bottles we use just in the United States could wrap around the globe this many times. And it's like, I always try to just use a refillable water bottle, but it's like, I feel like we need to do more. We need to let people know how many plastic bottles we're using, but that's a whole nother thing to talk about. Anything else you want to say about the Panama Papers? I mean, we probably know more than anybody else, and that's still not a whole lot.
Yeah, there's just so much, and there's so many things that are related to this that it's just impossible to talk about honestly, because it's a huge deal, you know? Like, people should be in the streets, like, angry at other people right now.
Everyone's saying this is way, like you were telling me just before, and everyone's talking about this. It's way bigger than what Snowden exposed. It's way bigger than everything with WikiLeaks. It's way bigger than the NSA scandal, because it's literally millions of documents. And this has been over a couple of years. Like, I was listening to one podcast where they were talking how this kind of started, and I don't remember specifically, but I think it was a couple of years ago, where it kind of reminded me of in House of Cards, where the guy who ended up shooting Frank Underwood, spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen it yet, then it's your fault.
Dude, we might have to edit that out.
No, okay, never mind. But you know what I mean? Like, he killed Zoe and the Russo, and then he was looking like behind the scenes because he's a reporter and a investigative journalist.
Yeah, Frank killed those people, and then the dude was researching it.
Yeah, it's like they were talking about how these people a couple years ago were behind the scenes, kind of looking up all these documents and emails, and that's pretty crazy because they knew about this, but they couldn't tell everyone about it yet because they had to get it all together. So that's so crazy because, I mean, just imagine the life of having this thing you're about to blow. You have to get it all together first.
They would be scared all the time. And the thing is, it's not like they're safe now. You know, like, it's not like, okay, once we get this all together, we're going to be safe. No, it's just once we get this all together, people will believe us. And that's even worse in a way because a lot of people with a lot of power are going to hate the people who leaked that, and they're going to be trying to find them, you know? Yeah. Especially the more corrupt those people are. Like, Putin has had his rivals killed allegedly, but you know, we know it. And like, so you got to believe that those people who leaked this information have a bounty on their head somewhere.
I actually have to look into like who these people actually were that did it. I think one of the guys that was in it though was on the podcast, like he was talking about it.
Oh really?
I forgot what podcast it was or what episode, but yeah, like I'm wondering what are happening to these people now, whether they need to be protected at all, or I mean, are these people in Germany, like that's the newspaper it went to, were they they from that newspaper, or did they leak it to that newspaper? I don't know. We'll have to see. More we'll have more to talk about it next week, or if all this it's probably not going to be blown over by then. This is probably going to be they're just going to be talking more and more about it over the next month or two or more. But
it's anonymous, no one knows. Use the pseudonym John Doe.
Interesting. I don't know if we're going to ever figure out who it is.
Yeah, hopefully not, honestly, because that person doesn't want to be known,
and they should be protected.
Yeah.
And they're a hero. we respect you.
Anyways, this kind of goes to, like, it connects to just how a lot of people in a lot of governments feel like their governments aren't for them, you know? Like, a lot of people feel like just the way governments are set up is not fair. And that reminds me of this thing that's going on right now. It was called the Superdelegate Hit List when it first came out. Whoever made it now changed it to the Superdelegate List because hit list has, like, a bad connotation to it, you know, like, oh, we're going to kill these people. But basically, it's a Bernie Sanders supporter who got together a ton of information on all the superdelegates and made it into, like, a spreadsheet. And it says who the superdelegate is, who they support, and then gives, like, a bunch of contact information. And for some of these people, it's even private phone numbers and stuff. And so basically, all of these superdelegates have been slammed with Bernie supporters, like being, you're stupid, and why are you voting for Hillary? She's obviously corrupt, and stuff like that. And it's an interesting thing because the guy who made it, it seems undemocratic that superdelegates exist to people who support Bernie right now, because Bernie's not that far away from Hillary in, like, regular delegates. And so basically, whoever made it was making a statement like superdelegates are undemocratic, essentially. But the way that people are using this information is kind of messed up. Like, they're harassing these delegates, essentially. And that's not going to help anything at all, you know? You're not going to convince someone to do something by harassing them, so.
This goes into when I go on my regressive left rants. I mean, remember, I'm a liberal. The root of a lot of people's and my frustration with the regressive left, and sometimes just liberals in general, is we call people bullies while not realizing when we're bullying people. Yeah. Like, we always talk about, like, are Republicans aware of how crazy they are? Well, you have to think, are liberals aware of how crazy they are? They seem less aware of how crazy they are. Because, I mean, it's like, this is just one example. You know, we're trying to paint ourselves as the nice guys, us Bernie supporters. But then if you go and, like, threaten some superdelegates for supporting Hillary, that's a terrible thing. And just the main example for it for me is people are just getting increasingly violent towards Trump supporters and at Trump rallies. There was the blocking the road in Arizona, which is another thing because we're also claiming to be the democratic ones. Like, we want democracy. This is what the people want. While we're shutting down democracy, you can't keep people from going to a rally for a candidate. That's anti-democratic. That it's democratic to let people go and support their candidate. And then just the thing in the Chicago, that rally getting shut down, that's also anti-democratic. It was shut down because people could not control themselves. They were, I mean, I haven't seen many videos, so you're saying maybe, oh, that instantly disqualifies you. But I did hear, and I actually did see some videos where Bernie supporters were getting a little violent. They weren't under control. So just in general with words and being violent, you can't tell us that this group of people, Trump supporters, are violent. You have just as much capability to be violent as they do, and we're being just as much a bully as they are. I don't usually post political stuff on Facebook, but the other day I had this thought, and I felt so strongly about it that I just had to post it, and it got like no likes. Like, usually the things I post get likes because they're like funny things I think about. But I was thinking, where is it? I put it here. If you want Trump supporters to stop making blanket statements about Muslims, stop making blanket statements about Trump supporters. That's the root of this. We blame Trump supporters for all these things while we do the same things. Like, we're saying, oh, Trump supporters are racist because they make these blanket statements about Muslims. That's something liberals complain about a lot. We hate when people make blanket statements, and for good reasons. You shouldn't make blanket statements about groups, but we're making blanket statements about Trump supporters. Like, you find out someone's a Trump supporter, and a lot of people just instantly think that person's racist. I don't instantly think anything about you if you're a Trump supporter. I'm going to ask you why you support Trump, and I might disagree with that, but I'm not going to call you an idiot. I'm not going to hate you. And there's so much more to say about it. I just can't put it all into a short little monologue.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But going back to the superdelegates kind of thing, there's been a lot of debate on whether they're Democratic or not, because of basically in all the elections past, eventually the superdelegates line up with the vote, and so like whoever gets the superdelegate is the same person who would have won usually. But in this election right now, they basically are not that far apart, you know. Clinton has 1,287 and Sanders has 1,037, and so that's like about 200 apart, you know. But Hillary has 16 times the amount of superdelegates, you know. So that's just, it doesn't make sense in that regard, because they should have around an equal number of superdelegates at least, and that would put them on a much more level playing field to what's going on now. So I don't know. I think that's an important debate, is whether superdelegates are democratic or not, and whether they should be gotten rid of, because I saw a lot of interviews with the head of the Democratic National Committee, and basically the only reason she gave to keeping superdelegates was, well, we've had them since 1984, so and it's just a really interesting thought. And
the argument for tradition is never a good. I mean, maybe there's some arguments where I could see, oh yeah, that's maybe we've been doing it for all along, so maybe it's a good idea. But just in general, the argument from that's a logical fallacy. Argument from tradition, saying something is good because we've always done it, isn't necessarily a sound argument. But yeah, just why do we even have superdelegates? Could anyone answer that question?
I don't know.
But Bernie's won the past 8 primaries now.
Yeah.
The next one is New York, which is, I think, 200. I don't know if that's accurate. 200 something delegates. Maybe my mind's just playing tricks on me. But yeah, there's so much going on right now with. My mind's just going crazy with all the regressive left stuff. We just have to keep talking about, because it's I feed off of it.
Okay,
so,
sure.
So I mean, last time we were talking about feminism for the most part. Um, and what was I just talking about? I was just talking about Bernie supporters being just as much bullies towards Trump supporters as we say they are towards us. So, and this is just a problem with the left to me most of the time is we don't see when we're being stupid. Like, so another example is like I think with the regressive left, it kind of exists in all these different realms, all these groups that we see as oppressed. So you have like women, you have transgendered people, gay people, and all the different ethnical minorities. Um, so right now, one that's being kind of annoying to me I mean, they're all being annoying at the same time. But one thing that was really frustrating after we legalized gay marriage, I'm a complete supporter of gay marriage. Like, I feel like when I talk about this stuff, I sound like some conservative bigot. But I'm a liberal, just like everyone else here, okay? But what really frustrated me was after when we were trying to legalize same-sex marriage, one of our biggest arguments for same-sex marriage was it doesn't affect your life. What do you care what these two are doing? You don't have to pay any attention to it. It's not going to affect you. And that's stuff like that is a big reason to me why libertarianism is so attractive to a lot of people, because this is America. There's freedom. I'm very for doing what you want as long as it doesn't affect anybody else, and that's why so many people support gay marriage.
There has to be like a level to that though. Like,
Yeah.
if someone's killing children in their basement in Virginia and you live in California, it's not affecting you, but you're gonna think it's wrong, you know?
Well,
and
yeah.
you're gonna be against that. So I don't know. There's always a line that has to be drawn, and it's always where do we draw that line? And it's just
Well, yeah, but here's what I'm saying about it is so that was a legit argument. That's a big reason why I and everyone else that supported gay marriage was for it. But then what happened was, so like I'm a big supporter of anything that you're just doing that isn't affecting anybody else. So what became a problem was recently, once we legalized gay marriage, all these things started happening. You had the Kim Davis thing, which of course I was against Kim Davis. She should have just done her job. Kim Davis was the lady in Kentucky that didn't issue the marriage license to the same-sex couple.
oh yeah, that's what you're paid for, and it's the law, so
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Yeah. And then, but I heard, I'm fairly certain this is true, I heard that those two guys went around to a bunch of different offices to see whether or not they were abiding by the new law, like they had to issue it. And then there was another example of like a same-sex couple going around to a bunch of places, and they went to this one pizza place and they wouldn't cater to them because they were a same-sex couple. And then of course that started another media outrage. And there was, of course, there might have been multiple ones with wedding cakes where like the one Christian bakery wouldn't make a cake for the wedding couple. And like, here's the problem with that. I was not a supporter of any of these things. Of course, I wasn't for Kim Davis because I think she's crazy. But I don't like the fact that once we won the same-sex marriage debate because we made it about the fact that it wouldn't affect anybody else. But then once we got that right, we went out and made it affect everybody else. If you're going to win the right to marry your husband or marry your husband, if you're a gay man and you win the right to marry the love of your life, or you're a woman and you win the right to marry the love of your life, then you don't then get to go out and make it affect other people's lives when you just won your right to marry because you said it's not going to affect anyone else's life.
That's a good point.
Like, I just don't like how that worked out. Like, we can't I mean, maybe an argument that makes even more sense is you can't force a Catholic church to marry a gay couple. You can't, because I'm not for pushing that on someone else. Like, you should be allowed to marry whoever you want, but we're not going to force other people to get involved if they don't agree with it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's the law. You can deny service if you're a private institution to whoever you want, you know? Like, if I ran a cake baking company and this dude came in and he wanted to order a cake and I was just like, I'm not going to give you a cake because you're a redhead, I would be completely within my rights to do that. And I mean, sure, it makes me an asshole, but hey, I'm still allowed.
Yeah, it's funny though, because before you go and call me a jerk for saying such a horrible thing, that like people shouldn't be forced to take part in something they disagree with. It's like okay, that makes sense to me, but then if an interracial couple, like if someone refused to make a wedding cake for an interracial couple, I'd be a little bit less okay with that. What's my rationale for that? I mean, maybe it's just because we've been okay with interracial marriages for a longer time. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, that's probably it.
I mean, I'm not right all the time. I can be right most of the time, but not all the time.
Yeah, that reminded me of an interesting statistic. Every single Christian church, like Presbyterian and like, I'm not saying Presbyterians did this. I'm not actually sure, but I do know that every single sect of Christianity that has accepted gay marriage and said that it's okay has actually lost members.
Really?
Like a lot of members, like badly. And I think that's really interesting because there are gay people who identify as Christian out there, you know, but obviously that kind of means that people who are Christian are not really for that, you know. They're like, hey, don't change that. And I think it's kind of like when you say, well, like when you give up one of your beliefs, it kind of weakens your position, you know. Like if the church is saying gay marriage is wrong like the whole time, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they're like, you know what, we changed our mind, it's fine. That kind of discredits everything that they say, you know. So it's interesting to me that they've lost members, even though like it seems like a majority of people are for gay marriage.
But then those people can go to another church that supports their values and their beliefs.
Yep.
And I believe that the churches should keep up with the times. They should modernize. This is very important. I don't know if you saw this, but Pope Francis issued recently saying like we need to treat gays better, and we need to treat all like other groups.
Yeah,
transgender better.
He didn't say that being gay was like okay under Catholic doctrine, and he definitely didn't say that gays could get married in Catholic churches, but he did say stuff that's like, hey, we can't just be like committing hate crimes and stuff. And also he basically made birth control okay.
Yeah.
Like he said, do it under your own conscience. So he's basically saying if you think birth control is okay, then it's okay. And that's a really big deal. And that's a huge step in modernization for the Catholic Church, I think. Because, I mean, birth control makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, of course it makes a lot of sense to me too.
Yeah, just because, I mean, you're not going to stop people from having sex. That's the bottom line, you know. And sure, you can like be like abstinence is the best policy, but people are going to have sex. So birth control makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And it's just like the Catholic Church basically saying, hey, it's okay if you do this. That's a huge deal. And then kind of what you were saying before about how if someone didn't like what one of the Christian churches said, they could just switch to another one. That's a big issue with Christianity. Like we talk about religion sometimes, and we talk about how it affects the world and stuff. But so I'm going to bring this up now, even though we've never really talked about this before. But one of the major weaknesses of Christianity is how divided it is, like with the Catholics and the Orthodox and all of the Protestant religions. And so, just like how you said that they could just switch to another one, that's something that kind of discredits Christianity as a whole. And I'm not trying to make any statements about what religions are true or false, but like that's one of the issues Christianity is going to have to deal with, is like trying to have a unified doctrine to have a sense of authority, you know. And at the same level, Islam is going to have to deal with this problem of radicalization, you know. So it's interesting how social issues can really shine a light on like not just social, even like social and like all the issues can shine a light on religion and how it needs to be changed for the times.
Mm-hmm. And I think over time, Christianity might just see even more splits. I mean, I don't see them uniting in any way. They might just split more.
Actually, they are uniting. The Catholic Church is working with the Orthodox, like the Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox, I think it is, Church, and they're actually like on good terms. And my world religions teacher believes that in his lifetime, and he's I'm not gonna say he's pretty old, but he's in his like 60s, I think. He thinks that in his lifetime he could see them unify again, and he's a Catholic, so I trust his judgment on that.
Wow.
Along with being
Interesting.
a doctor of theology and a former Presbyterian minister, I believe his judgment that the Catholic Church might be able to start unifying with churches. And another thing is the Lutheran Church.
Mm-hmm.
They were made because of Luther's 95 Theses. He was like, hey, this is everything wrong with the Catholic Church. Well, basically, the Catholic Church has addressed all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
and they've solved all of those problems. So there's kind of this whole, like, why are you guys still not a part of us kind of thing going on between the Lutherans and the Catholic Church? And they don't have a good answer for that, you know, just because it's like, well, why? We're like, they fixed everything, so why aren't we a part of them? It's interesting, like, how religion can change over time, you know, because I think, like, at least for me, for a long time, I thought of religion as like a concrete thing. And maybe it's just because something it's like it's existed for so long, you know. So it's just I don't think of it as a changing thing, but it does change, even though it moves kind of slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, well, I'm in my Islam unit now in my world religions class, and what's interesting is, of course, from the outside, as Westerners, a lot of us seem to think of Islam and, of course, other religions as being like all people of that religion are really similar to each other. Of course, no one would ever say it like all Christians share these beliefs and these values. Of course, there's tons of sects of Christianity, but there's so much diversity in Islam. I mean, even you just have the Sunni and the Shia, which we often don't see as that different. But I mean, so many people within Islam have so many different viewpoints, and of course, this is the whole argument between, oh, are all Muslims bad or are they all good? And I don't like either side of the argument, because you have like the far right that are like, Islam is inherently a dangerous religion and we should keep an eye on them. And then you have like the extreme left that's all like, we call them the Muslim apologists, where it's like, Islam is a good religion and ISIS isn't Islam. And it's like, well, yeah, ISIS is Islamic. They don't represent Islam, but they are Islamic. And to say that they're not Islamic is pretty stupid.
and the thing is, you have to be able to recognize that Islam as a religion, I'm not going to say it breeds terrorism, but it does have a path to extremism. And so that's something, like I said before, how Christianity is divided, and that's what their major weakness. If Islam is trying to be a religion about, you know, everyone like loving, and like how people are, like how you say those Muslim apologists try to say like, oh, Islam's really about love and about, like, you know, being a good person and stuff. Well, if you're really going to say that, then you need to have you need to issue this problem that they're having with terrorism, because the whole world is looking upon that, and it discredits their beliefs. Because yeah, you're right, the majority of Muslims are fine people, they're great people, you know, but the people who are getting attention are the terrorists. So that's something that Islam as a whole has to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thing related to problems in the Middle East and with Islam. I don't know if I told you this, but I'm doing this thing now where, like, after the Oscars, I used to be really into movies and I wanted to be a filmmaker before I found out I really wanted to be a teacher. But after watching the Oscars, I was like, I wanted to get back into movies again, and I wish I had seen more of the movies from last year. So now I'm trying to go see a movie every Tuesday. So last Tuesday was, or no, it was this Tuesday. I saw Eye in the Sky, which like just came out, and so it's about like a drone. It's about drone strikes, and so there's like this one operation. They have a couple different leaders of Al-Shabaab in Somalia, and they're about to do a drone strike on this house they're in, and it follows like all these people that are related on this one mission. There's people from the UK, from America, and then there's they have operatives on the ground. And I love movies that bring up they make you think about things that are going on right now, and that's what this was. Because what happens in the movie is they're about to do this drone strike, but then this little girl goes and starts selling bread right on the outside of the house that's there. So they were just about to launch this missile, but then all their rules for engagement get thrown off because, you can't just say, oh, there's a girl there, she'll just have to die. There's like, I mean, of course, I'm just going off of what I saw in a movie. Maybe it's not 100% accurate. But, when you do these kinds of operations internationally, there's rules of conduct. You can't just launch a missile into a place where there's civilians and say, oh, but the bad guy was there. So, the whole movie revolves around how they figure this out. But yeah, and then in the movie, they're about to launch the missile and say, hey, it's one girl, because these terrorists, they find out they have a camera inside the house. They find out that they have an explosive vest, so they're about to go do a suicide mission. And they estimate that they'll probably kill 80 civilians on a busy street when this thing goes off. So they say, oh, if we don't launch this missile on these guys right now, they're going to go kill 80 people. If we do launch the missile, we save 80 people, but we kill one little girl. So everyone's like, oh yeah, we can get on board with that. We're ready to go. And then this movie also kind of reminded me of 12 Angry Men, because of how in 12 Angry Men there's people with different viewpoints, and then they kind of argue it out. There's people in this movie that have different things at stake. They have different interests. Like, there's one lady's a military commander that's like the head of this mission, and then there's the pilots that are just kind of doing what they're told, and they don't want to hurt a little girl. But then one of the people who's like a politician, and she doesn't have she's not the highest, but she still has some influence on the people she's in the room with. And they're about to launch the missile because they're like, okay, let's go. We're going to save 80 people, but this one girl's going to die. But then she says, which is something that I think is very important to how we think about how we do things in the Middle East. She says, if we kill her, then they win the propaganda war. If they kill those 80 people, then we win the propaganda war. So the reason that's important to think about in how we do things is, like, everyone's always talking about, oh, we're getting involved in the Middle East. Yeah, we go kill the bad guys, but then that's going to have repercussions, and that's going to change the way people think about us. If we kill one person that didn't deserve to die, then we look like terrible people, and more people are going to want to kill us. If they go and kill a ton of people, then we look like the good guys, and then we have a reason to go and kill a bunch of bad guys. I just love movies like that, how it just got everyone thinking about the repercussions of things that we do.
And that just kind of makes me think about how all weapons technology is basically an attempt to get away from the repercussions of our actions in killing someone. Like, originally we had to use our fists or a rock to kill someone, and you're right there, you have to do it. Then we invent bows and then eventually guns, and all you have to do is pull a trigger or let go of a string, and then a person over there dies, And then we have bombs where it's like, I'm over here, I don't even have to look at the person, I just press this button and then they're dead, And so we're just trying to remove ourselves from that guilt of killing people. And obviously I'm going to sound like an idealist, but it's just like, there's no excuse, there's no excuse for war. And it's just like, we're trying to make ourselves feel okay with this, and it's like, we have our reasons to do it, It's like, oh, well, we don't believe that these people are legitimate in their claim, like what's happening in Israel versus Palestine, And so it's just like, we're trying to remove ourselves from the guilt of actually having to kill human beings just so that we can support this idea that we have that, hey, we want to live here and you can't live here.
It's kind of a way of de-individuation that we don't usually think of. When we think of de-individuation, we usually think of like wearing a mask or something like that. But, having a gun and being further away from someone and not having to do the dirty work is you feel a lot less guilty for it. And people usually when people are talking about drone strikes, they usually talk about how being in a bunker in Nevada flying these drones kind of takes you away from the impact of like what you're doing, what the people you're killing. But in this movie, Aaron Paul plays like one of the pilots, and then there's some other girl that's with him that they're the pilots, and they're very distraught by what they're doing. Like they start crying when they're about to like kill the girl, and of course that's just a movie. But whenever I see movies, I like to go on IMDb and look at the trivia because there's like some cool stuff about the movie, like behind the scenes stuff. And it said something like 30% of drone pilots, once they're done, once they're out of that, they need to be treated for PTSD, which is a surprising amount. I mean, you'd think just sitting there in front of a computer screen launching missiles, that's what I'm saying. Like everyone always says, oh, that's so de-individualizing. You don't even feel guilty for what you're doing. No, they feel very guilty for what they're doing. And of course, they're just doing what they're being told. It's the cost of war. But yeah, 30%. I mean, I'd be impressed if you told me that's the rate that people in combat had to be treated for PTSD.
It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've read Ender's Game, but
I read like half of it when I was little.
In Ender's Game, basically they tell him that he's on a training mission, like not a training mission, but like in a training simulator, and he's like has to fight this alien race that they call the Buggers, and their actual name is the Formics, but the Buggers is like a derogatory term for them. And he's like in this simulator, and he uses this weapon that blows up their entire planet. So essentially he commits a xenocide, as they call it, like destroying an entire alien race. And he just thinks it's a simulator, right? But then afterwards they tell him, oh yeah, by the way, that wasn't a simulator. You were actually controlling the actual fleet, fighting the actual people, and like you actually did just blow up their entire planet and destroy this entire species. And he just, because when you're doing something like that, when you're actually doing it, you're like, oh, this is just a game. But if you found out when you were playing Call of Duty that you were killing real people, you would like get so traumatized, and that's what happened to him essentially. And everyone's like, hey, you're a hero, you saved us. And he's like, I just killed an entire species. There were good people there had to be, so it's just kind of like that.
And we typically think, like when the idea from being behind a screen de-individualizing you, I think we have that idea because we always talk about it in the frame of cyberbullying, where like it's easier to call someone mean things behind a screen than up to their face. But when you think about it, there's a way when it's something on the scale of killing people, in a way being behind a screen might make it just as bad, because if you're in combat, you're seeing people in the flesh being killed.
The adrenaline.
That's a terrible thing. Of course, the adrenaline, the noise, just everything that's going on. But when you think about it, if you're sitting behind a screen on the other side of the world killing people, I think if I were to put myself in that, if I imagine being in that situation, I know what I'd be thinking about when I see a building explode from a missile that I launched on the other side of the world. I know what I would be thinking about would be, I'd say, oh my God, that's actually real. I mean, it looks like something I'd see on the computer on YouTube, but that's actually real. I mean, well, the things you see on YouTube, if it's a real explosion, that's real. But you say, like, I'm just seeing it on a screen in front of my face, but on the other side of the world, I just killed a bunch of people. And I think just trying to get over that, like, you have to try to tell yourself what I did, what that was actually real. That's just a whole nother level of traumatizing. I mean, not like, I don't mean whole nother level as in it's more traumatizing than combat. It's just that it's traumatizing another way.
Yeah, definitely. Because in combat, you can tell yourself I had no choice. And the thing is, for me, looking at it, is that it's something that would creep up on you, I think. I think that over time you would realize that, hey, this is a real thing that I actually did. I'm obviously just like speculating here, but over time you would just be like, oh my god, I killed these people. And it's not something that you would feel regret for right away, is just what I think.
And in another way I think it would be disturbing is if you're in combat, you're out there and you're living in harsh conditions, you're very uncomfortable the whole time. But here, if you're a drone pilot, I keep saying drone pilots are killing people, and like I hope we can understand that we're not blaming them. They're doing what they're told. I mean, again, it's the cost of war. This is what these people have to do. So we have a lot of sympathy for what they do. But you get to sit in a bunker and kill people, and then you just go and live your normal life again. I mean, of course, maybe you're living on a military base, so it's not like you're going home having a cup of coffee on your couch, but you're living a pretty comfortable life compared to what people in combat are facing. So I can imagine you having a lot of guilt when you're fighting in war at a certain level, and then going back to having a pretty comfortable life 5 minutes later.
Yeah, and we're talking about all this, but honestly, we have no idea.
We don't know anything about it.
This is one of the periods of time when we really are just two babbling idiots,
I mean, like, I just feel so stupid now because I'm getting all of this from one movie I saw. Like, whenever it's interesting, I said, I like movies that get us thinking about social things like this. And movies like that and any historical movies, biopics, after seeing it, I always wonder how real it actually was. Like, I know after seeing, a good example is after seeing The Social Network, I was like, was that how the story of Facebook actually played out? And I think a lot of parts of it are true, but of course, not every little thing is, and it's going to be true. This, I think, quite a bit of the stuff in it might actually be true. Of course, not the exact story, but the idea behind it. There's such a gray zone between what's fair to do in war and what's just a human rights abuse.
Yeah, and like I've said countless times, is there's a line and we have to decide where to draw it, and everyone will have a different opinion on where to draw that line. And it's hard, because you have to get people to think about this, but people know where they want to draw the line, and they're not willing to compromise on that, That's the thing, is a lot of people nowadays are not willing to talk about things. They're not willing to, like, waive their beliefs at all, and they're not, like, when you confront someone and you're like, I disagree with you on this, most people take it as a personal attack.
Yeah.
They're like, how dare you? And, like, it turns into a fight instead of an argument. And the difference is that an argument usually tries to come to an end, and a fight will just last forever.
I think I've gotten better at disagreeing with people, because there's actually quite a few conservative people out there that I respect, and I get a lot of ideas from them, and I like what they say, because when, like, a liberal like me will say, I don't like to describe myself with the term liberal, but it just paints a picture of my beliefs a little bit better to people. But what I like about these people, opposed to the conservatives we stereotypically think about, is these guys back their opinions up with actual things that have happened, with ideas that have validity and logic to them. And so these guys might say things that I agree with, and I think they have very good reasons for believing these things, but then they might have other things that they believe that I don't agree with, but then I can say, okay, I disagree with you, but you have valid reasons for believing that. And so, like when I say I think people should have more people that they respect on the other side of the spectrum, these are the kinds of people that they should look to, because a lot of people don't realize that there are people on the other side that make sense. Like, these guys make sense. I don't agree with them on everything, so when I don't agree with them on something, I can respect it because they still make sense with their argument.
Yeah, I think that's the goal that everyone should try to find in their beliefs is, I have a logical reason to believe this. Because if you, for example, how we were talking about the head of the Democratic National Convention and why she believes that we should keep superdelegates, her belief, her only reason is, oh, well, we've had them since 1984 and it's worked before. So, that's not a good reason. Why would you be proud of that belief, So it's just, that's one of those things where that's a lady who's on kind of the same side as me, but I don't respect her beliefs because she doesn't have a good reason for it at all.
And one of the guys I was just listening, I was telling you about the Rubin Report, which I just got into, and I really like it because he's a liberal, but he has a lot of disagreements with the regressive left. He's fairly similar to me, but he does have a lot of these conservative guys that have respectable viewpoints. And even though he's a liberal and they're a conservative, they agree with so many things. But the guy I was just listening to, he had on there was Ben Shapiro, which is one of these conservative guys, and he's Jewish, so he's religious. But he was just talking about how your argument for something shouldn't be just a religious argument, because if your goal is to convince someone of your argument and they aren't religious, you can't go to an atheist, and I mean, this happens to me all the time and happens to so many atheists all the time when they're debating someone that's religious. Their argument for something is they cite the Bible. Well, you can't cite the Bible to someone that doesn't see validity in the Bible. And this is a religious guy saying that. He was saying how he goes to these pastors' churches and synagogues or whatever, specifically to talk to the people there about how, hey, your only argument for something should not be something religious. So I like this guy because he has he has a foot in the religious side and the foot in, a side that isn't just, hey, we're just going to cite our religion. And he was also talking about an example of something that I disagree with, but I respect it. Whenever people on the left that, are against, just using religion for a part of an argument. So basically what I see a lot of the time is with liberals that don't agree with religion, they'll hear a religious person say, homosexuality is a sin, therefore I don't agree with it. And we see that as terrible. I mean, I don't like that. I see it as, oh, you see homosexuality as a sin, so you don't really like gay people. But he said something I think was very important. He just slipped this little thing in that instantly made me respect him. He said, as a religious person, I believe homosexuality is a sin, but you completely have the right to engage in it. And I respected that so much because it's like if people said being an alcoholic is a sin, but I'm not going to hate you for being an alcoholic. I'm going to help you. Now, of course, I'll disagree with the fact that you think that homosexuality is like a homosexual needs help. They're probably very happy and accepting with the fact that they're homosexual, and they probably enjoy their life just as much as we do being straight. But I had respect for the fact that he doesn't treat homosexuals as people that are bad because they're choosing this lifestyle, as they call it, which he didn't just describe it as lifestyle, but just in general, I don't like when people describe homosexuality as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because I don't live a straight lifestyle. I mean, maybe I do if you consider looking at women walking down the street part of my straight lifestyle.
That's the thing. A lifestyle is a way that you live your life, consciously. It's let me think if I can find a way to describe
I'm a
this.
hipster.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
There's
a
a hipster lifestyle. It's I drink things out of mason jars and listen to
the vegan lifestyle. That's a lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. You choose
That's
to be
a popular
vegan.
one.
You're like, oh, I want to be vegan because of my reasons, and then you just don't eat meat. But there's no straight or homosexual lifestyle, It's not I'm a straight guy, so I'm going to like women and I'm going to do things straight guy likes. I automatically like sports now. No, it's not like that, It's just, it's not a choice as number one, which is up for debate for some people for some reason. That's a whole other topic.
It's not, but for some people.
Yeah, and then number two is it's not a person is I'm going to live a homosexual lifestyle. So I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna look at hot guys when they walk past me. It's like it's not like you do that, you know.
It's like you go to your friend and they're like, oh yeah, I don't eat meat anymore. You know, I was just thinking, and I'm just gonna live the vegan lifestyle. So I went to the store and I just bought some. I bought some soy, and whatever vegans eat, their plants. They're not fun stuff like meat, but you know, it's like if you walked up to your friend and they were like, you know, I was thinking, I think I'm just gonna go homosexual now.
Yeah.
It's like that's not a thing.
I believe that being homosexual is more ethical towards
it's
society.
gonna be healthier for me.
Yeah.
It's like going gluten. It's like I have more energy now. ever since I became a homosexual, I have so much more energy.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that interesting note, do you think we're gonna wrap it up?
I think that's gonna be how we're gonna wrap it up
That's a good
tonight.
place to end it. I'm gonna go homosexual for a week and see how I'm feeling. So I'll get back to you next week on that.
See if it makes your energy levels higher.
It's definitely gonna improve my mood.
Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. On that note, we're gonna end it. Have a good day, night, whatever it is.